Welcome, family. I'm sorry about that. I appreciate your patience and all that good stuff. For some reason, the show wasn't connecting the Facebox, so we had to restart it. I appreciate your patience. There we go. That echo. All that good stuff. All right. Let me get that out of here. Go back to. Hold on. I guess I can do this. Whoop, whoop, whoop. We back in there, so appreciate your patience. I'll get this together. Seemed like we hadn't been in the studio in a minute. So I expected to have a little something going on, but I don't know. So glad to be back with you. I hope you all have been having a fantastic couple of weeks since what has it been? 2 weeks, 3 weeks, something like that. We've been out of the studio for a little bit, traveling on the road, having the time of our lives, learning and experiencing. I anticipated the connection to be a little off. I just didn't know which one was going to be off. So again, I appreciate your patience and understanding as I reestablish the connection with Facebox. So the live didn't go live on Facebox at first. So yeah. And of course I know it's Facebook, but ever since I had an old supervisor call it Facebox, I've been calling it Facebox ever then. So welcome to Soul Swami Live. This is your first time here. What we do here is discuss healing and the evolution of ourselves. Woo! Okay, so I did finally make a video for, which is wild. I should have did. Oh no, I did. I finally did the San Diego video. I haven't done the Florida video. Let me make sure. I think I did the San Diego video the other day. So I just gotta put my voice on it. And then we should be good. Hold on now. Yeah. Well, I thought I did the video. Well, I know I did the video for sure. But I did a San Diego video. It's just not showing up. So I guess I'm going to have to redo the San Diego video and then post it. And then we'll work on Florida. I did post a picture from San Diego, so we went in at that. But I haven't posted anything from Florida. So I just like to share with you all in the moment, in the presence, in the time. And honestly, I talk about this a lot too. Streaming requires a lot of energy, a lot of time, a lot of hours, and I just be, oh God. Sometimes I don't have the emotional availability, and I always drag my feet on when I do videos anyway. So, but that's my goal. I'm gonna do a little better. Girl, Lord knows I need an assistant now. I need one so bad. Don't tell nobody I sang it like that, but I definitely need some help. Hit me now. Hit me. Yes. I keep on thinking clientele, but that's not the word I'm looking for. I am content. That's the word. Content hoarder. I do. So the good thing about content and the way I do it, I can post it anytime and it'll still seem brand new. Nobody knows. But again, Soul Swami Live. We discuss healing and the evolution of ourselves into the best version of ourselves. And we do that so that we can have a collective energy that we can tap into and be a part of a group of people who are also on the same boat that's trying to become the best version of themselves. Hey, can you tell that this is a yellow shirt? A yellow shirt? Because it looks a little white. Well, it's supposed to be yellow. And I guess that's a big thing because I hadn't wore. Oh, you can tell it's yellow? Okay, cool. Fantastical. I hadn't worn a yellow shirt in I don't know how long, so I'm crunk. I've been trying to make sure I get colored shirts that match every energy point or chakra that we talk about, but I had another shirt. I bought a couple of shirts while I was away. And I bought another shirt, a short sleeve shirt that I was going to wear today. But, yeah, close enough. Butter yellow. But when I button it, my neck's so strong. So it didn't necessarily work so good around my neck. So I had to swap it up. Now, unbutton, I leave that top button unbuttoned. It's a perfect shirt. Make my guns look big. All that. Perfect shirt. So we had to go with the yellow today because I am struggling to find a red shirt, which is crazy. But I finally did get a red tie. This is new too. And I can't help but I took this picture when I was an executive director, and I had one of those ties that you get the shirt and the tie together, right? But ironically, I didn't have the shirt on with the tie. I just had the tie. So I took that headshot picture or whatever, and the tie just didn't look right. Then one of my board members came up to me and she was like, your tie look effed up, cuz. I don't know where she felt comfortable enough to talk to me like this. She's like, your tie look effed up, cuz you got that cheap ass tie on, right? And I never really paid attention to that. I was like, I'm a frugal spender, so cheap ain't always bad with me. You know what I mean? Long as it's quality. But ever since then, I paid attention. So I make sure I buy quality ties. I buy quality shirts for the most part. So this is not that you care, but this is probably the best tie that I have. It's a Nautica tie. It's very thick, man. Very, 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 very nice. It's thick. So it definitely was choking me with that tight collar and all that stuff. So you can catch this show every Tuesday. Thanks. You know what? Thank you. I got to stop saying y'all probably don't care, but it ain't about what y'all care. It's just sharing vulnerability, openness, and just, sharing some of my excitement. You see, I got that big Kool-Aid smile. So thank you. Again, you can catch the show every Tuesday and Thursday, generally at 7 p.m. Eastern. You also, if you want to be a part of the show, don't forget that you can hit the link that is either in the description or somewhere in the chat, and you can join the show for an energy reading for yourself, right? Let's not forget that. We do live energy readings as well, right? So, the beginning of every show, I feel like I hadn't done this in so long. I feel out of touch, disconnected from it. But we generally focus on an energy point that we want to balance the energy in. And this week we are on the root. Hence the red lighting. So if you're curious about the color of your root, it is red. The root energy point depends on who you talk to. Some people call it your feet. Some people call it the base of your spine. But I like the feet. So I make sure the chakra points cover, or the energy points cover the whole body. And it is for your sense of survival, your sense of safety, your sense of stability, your security, and your grounding, your connecting to those things, people, places that are surrounding you. If you are into color therapy, you want to think red. Red is the color for your root chakra. And if you are into essential oils, you want to think frankincense and myrrh. This time I won't laugh. Patchouli and black pepper are all good for your root chakra. And if you are into crystals and gemstones, you want to think red jasper, garnet, bloodstone. Hey, black obsidian. I was looking for my black obsidian. I think I got it out there with my black amethyst and my purple amethyst and somewhere. But black obsidian is good for your root chakra, help you feel grounded, balanced, and connected to places, people, things that all surround you. Toddy, thank you. Because I know you probably on the road. So, because I know unless you got there, here comes Speed Racer. Unless you speed racer, I know you ain't make it to your destination that fast. So I appreciate you because you definitely can ride and listen as I serenade you, right? So right now we start off our energy work with a little bit of sound therapy. So we're going to hit the bowl. Then we are going to do some breath work, which I feel like we haven't done in weeks. It just feels like so long ago. And then we'll do our affirmations and we'll get the party started, the show on the road. So right now during this time, all you really have to do is just relax, release the stresses of the day, and accept and attract and receive a calming, balanced, grounded energy. Hey, Liberty, I got to say that your daughter might be slightly correct because I heard someone using not even a bowl, they were using the tuning fork things. And I was listening to that video and that thing was so loud. So when I'm in the same space as the noise, I can't always tell how it translates across the web to other people, but it definitely gets a little loud. So your daughter has a point with that a little bit. Doo-doo-doo. Thank you. I appreciate the love. I'll be sharing your hikes all the time. Facebooks. Don't forget, say a comment so I can give you a real shout out and all that stuff. So next we will do some breath work. I think box breath is a good place to start since we hadn't done it in a while. If you are unfamiliar with box breathing, it is 4-4-4. You breathe in 4-4 count, you hold 4-4 count, and then you exhale 4-4 count. But during this time, all you really have to do is just listen to the sound of my voice, and I will and I will guide you through this process. I will pay attention to that, very sensitive to sound, right? And I think I say that because, as wild as it is, I'm sensitive to sound. I can hear everything and nothing at the same time. But in saying that I'm sensitive to sound, I've also grown to recognize that I'm just sensitive, period. I'm sensitive to all things: energy change, mood change, temperature change, noise levels. It just hits me very differently. I don't want to say resonates, but it definitely does things in my body. So if you recognize that she might be a little sensitive to sound, I start paying attention to see what else she's sensitive to. I'm sensitive to touch, that's one of the reasons why I'm good at Reiki, because I am so sensitive to touch. Hey, definitely, I am a sensory person, right? And as a child, sometimes that would get me into trouble because either I want to touch it or don't put it near me because it will drive me crazy. And it even comes into play with some of the plants I got, right? So some of the plants that I have, the leaves feel very different. Like I have one that I love, and the leaves feel very furry. Maybe I should. This is going all crazy. There you go. I don't even know why. Well, I guess I know why. It decided to shoot out a stem this long, right? And all the other ones. But I love this plant because the leaves, one, are purple on the other side, and then the leaves feel furry. So definitely, definitely works with my sensory. And I got another one up there, but I'm not getting up to get it. All right, so right now, what is it? I forgot. I forgot. That is my impersonation of Forgetful Jones. So I have to look it up again. I know it's in the prayer plant family because I got a ton of prayer plants. Most of them are philodendrons, but yeah. Then I got a tree that's a brother. Um, yeah, it's just most of them philodendrons. I had to look up what that one is again. Somebody always asks me what is it. Not my old brain kicking in and I forget. All right. So now we're gonna do that breath work again. We're doing box breathing, which is 444. You just gotta listen to the sound of my voice as I guide us through this exercise. Make sure you're trying to clear your mind. You start thinking about your sense of safety, your sense of stability, your sense of security, and the things that make you feel safe, stable, and secure. And definitely consider your grounding, your connectedness to everything as we do this breathing exercise. On the count of three, we will start with box breathing, 444. 1, 2, 3. Breathe in 4, 2, 3, 4. Hold 4, 2, 3, 4. Release 4, 2, 3, 4. Breathe in 4, 2, 3, 4. Hold 4, 2, 3, 4. Release 4, 2, 3, 4. Breathe in 4, 2, 3, 4. Hold 4, 2, 3, 4. Release 4, 2, 3, 4. Last time, family. Breathe in 4, 2, 3, 4. Hold 4, 2, 3, 4. Release 4, 2, 3, 4. Next, I want you to repeat these affirmations after me. These are good things that you can say to remind yourself to help support your sense of survival, your safety, your stability, your security, and your grounding. Whenever you feel a little disconnected, these are certain things that you can say to yourself, and I just need you to repeat them after me. I am safe and secure. I am grounded and centered. I am self sufficient. I am financially secure. Claim that, family. And I love being in my body. There's no one else quite like it. All right. So now we'll get this party started. Move this over. Doop, 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 doop. Okay, so show on the road. Boop, 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 boop. Man, it seems like we've been doing 12 universal laws for 12 universal years. But first, we're going to start off with a little bit of general discussion. So I want to share with you, I was in Marcos Island, Florida. Never had heard of it till I went. It actually was it was a beautiful place to be. You know what I mean? It was right on the beach. So I got to do some beach stuff. Some of the things that I don't quite do here. So I want to share with you. I went and let the kid in me. I did it on the show. So as a matter of fact, my homeboy Ali's like, I saw you when you were picking up the shells. So I want to share with y'all some of the shells that I picked up while on the beach, right? And it was a very specific story because I spent a bunch of my time. I wanted, I guess, these conch shells. So I wanted shells like this. Boop, 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 boop. Right? And I ain't find these shells. Somebody had to give them to me, right? But I was walking along the beach, man, just intent, just looking for these shells. I ran into one of my coworkers, and their child had found the perfect one, and I gave her a high five. I'm like, that's a great job. I want one like that. That's what I actually came by here for. And I was struggling to find those shells. So I like this one too. It reminds me of tiger's eye, which is interesting. And there's something inside of it. I feel like it's another piece of shell or something, but I haven't opened it. I don't think it's anything alive. So, and if it is, it ain't alive no more. And if it is alive, it ain't happy. So I like this one. And the closest that I found on my own was this one. And it looks a little porous or whatever, but that's the closest one I found on my own. So my coworker had to give me some. And while I was walking, I ran into a couple of my other coworkers. Got this clam, oyster shell, or something. I like that I had both parts of them, right? The whole shell. And my coworker was finding a ton of these shells, but they were so small, and she showed them to me in her hand. She was like, I keep finding all these little ones. And listen, it'd be like 100 shells just sitting there in a pile, and she'd find the one tiny one. And I'm like, man, you must have ninja eyes, right? And as she showed me these little tiny shells, I'm like, yo, those shells are actually pretty dope, right? And I had a moment, right? I don't really think that anything happens by coincidence. I think it's the synchronicity of life. So I think it was a major thing that when I was looking for the shells, I couldn't find any of the shells I was looking for, right? And then she showed me the little shells and how easily you found it, how easily she was finding them. And it was a sobering moment for me because it reminded me on how easily we can get lost in looking for the big examples, the big moments, the big times, and we overlook the small moments that are just as valuable and just as important. So I like this one. This is the one of the few halves that I got. That white's so bright, but I like the red, and it is a red and gray, which is extra dope, right? So after I got that sobering moment, that moment to remind me that those small moments come together and create big and powerful moments for us. I started. I opened my heart, my mind, and my eyes, and I started looking for small shells too. And when I started looking for small shells, I started finding a ton of the shells I liked. So I found this one, which is a gray and red as well. And I found a baby conch shell, which I love. I feel like it's the little brother of this one. So I started finding a huge variety of shells that was what I was looking for. And I ain't even realized, like she said, I was like, I ain't even realized that they came this small. How tiny that is. Like, what was living in there? And this one is just red striped. It definitely was. I had to go back to her the next day and tell her, thank you for reminding me to don't get caught up in just looking for the big extreme examples, because you can find the beauty in the small ones too. I like this one, and it looked like something was living inside of on the shell in its own shell. So, but that was Marcos Island, right? So then I came home, and while I was there and when I was on the way home, I'm trying to be a little more informed about fibromuscular dysplasia, right? I had never heard of it until I was diagnosed with it. I started looking at more and more information, and only 1.5% of the people who are even diagnosed with it are black, right? So I went to TikTok and looked for some videos and on people dealing with fibromuscular dysplasia, right? And the first thing I recognized that I need to be thankful. And I definitely am in a great space of gratitude, because for a lot of people, they have to go through a whole lot of trouble. They'll have aneurysms, they'll have strokes, they'll have heart attacks, they'll have a whole lot of negative things happen to them before they're even diagnosed with that. So I was in a space of gratitude to be able to get my diagnosis without having something tragic happen, right? And then I also was thankful because seeing the videos of people who are dealing with it, most of them are still living a very normal life, right? So it removes the fear or concern on, is this something that will shorten my lifespan? Do I have to walk around nervous and afraid that if I do this or if I don't pay attention to this? You really don't, right? You just got to be aware of it and be mindful on how you treat yourself, right? But then the other thing that I noticed is maybe only 5% was one in every 100,000 men get diagnosed with it, right? So I noticed that I wanted to know more about men dealing with this, right? And most of the responses, most of it is women that get it, but most of the responses were white women sharing for sure, sharing their experiences, right? And I wanted to at least see a man, any man, to be able to talk about it, because there are men who get it, right? But there wasn't any evidence of that, right? And that made me really think about, maybe I should start doing a couple of videos on it, right? Because representation really matters. Like they've had that conversation, or I've heard that conversation on how representation matters. And for me, I didn't really know how important that was, right? I've been afforded the opportunity that most of my experiences, or most of the things that I've gone through, or places I've been, I've had some reputation. I could see a black man somewhere, you know what I mean? Or a black person somewhere, right? But now that I'm dealing with this, it made me really come to terms and see the importance of representation, because as I'm looking for a very small population, I don't see any that look like me, or any that are really sharing the process that's similar to mine, right? So I decided that at some point, I think as I become a little more versed and get a little more understanding, or as I get the understanding, I just share with the people. We learn together on what this really is. I think one of the topics we're going to talk about is health as well, right? Because I think that is super important, right? But as I go forward and learn to live with this new understanding, this new lease on life, I want to make sure that when and if someone else goes through this process, when they look, they can find someone that looks like them. Representation does matter, right? And lastly, before I went to Marcos Island, we had a whole session, or not, I don't even know how long ago. It might have been last year, but I've talked about this Clifton Strength Finders a bunch, right? It's a personality inventory that lets you know what your strengths are, right? Because you get a better return on focusing on your strengths instead of making your weaknesses better, right? You work on your weaknesses, you be aware of them, but you lead with your strengths and you invest into your strengths, and you get a better return on investment. You get a better compensation when you focus on your strengths, right? So one thing that was interesting is when I first took the test, they told us that generally whatever you get, that's going to be consistent for the majority of your life. Now, that didn't resonate with me. You know what I mean? I feel like at any other point, like even some of my coworkers, they told me the first time they took it, like they were dealing with the passing of a parent, right? The way that I'd feel dealing with the passing of a parent and not in that space is different. We change, we evolve. So to think that this test would stay the same just didn't resonate right with me, right? So I had the opportunity to be able to take the test again. And I'm not going to go through it with you all, but I am going to say that my number one changed tremendously, right? So when I first took the test, the number one strength that this test said I had was one that is called restorative. And essentially restorative is still somewhere on my list, but it's not number 1, 2, 3. It's not in my top 3 anymore, right? So restorative is essentially being adept at seeing problems or dealing with problems. You're very good at dealing with problems. You're very good at seeing the problem and knowing what's needed to fix it, right? And that comes with a lot of weight. It comes with a lot of responsibility that requires a response, and it comes with a lot of accountability, the awareness of what's going on, right? And then it has to come with a lot of creativity to be able to think of solutions to these problems, right? And when you're good at that, you find yourself in a space where you're solving problems. And you're inundated with problems. And that made sense for me, for where I was in my life. At that point, I was in leadership positions. So I'm leading organizations. I'm leading people. I'm just doing a whole lot of leading. So if you got a leader or a good leader, you want to know that your leader is very good at solving problems, right? Which is ironic because I also had a supervisor that she wasn't good at solving problems. She was good at seeing something and making it better. So she'll let you solve the problems, and then she'd come in and try to make it better. Good, bad, or indifferent, that's what would happen. So restorative was the first number one when I first took it. But now I had to take it again. And we all have changed so much over these last couple of years that sometimes we look in the mirror and we can't even recognize ourselves. Like, man, if we pause and we think about all the work we've done, we've covered a lot of ground over the last couple of years, working on 3 years now. We've covered a lot of ground that many of us can almost not recognize the changes or who that old person was anymore. We're so far from what we used to be that the new person doesn't even look similar to the old person. We ask ourselves questions like how or why, and even sometimes we think back to our old selves and think in amazement in how that those were our behaviors, our understandings, our choices that we made that led to some of the experiences we had, the outcomes, the input we put in and the outcomes we got at, like thinking about the law of cause and effect. So this second time I took it, well, it ain't the second time, but it's been years since I took it. My number one was connectedness. And to simply put, that is everything is linked. And there are very few coincidences. You know, we call that the synchronicity of life. We don't even acknowledge it as a coincidence. We call it the synchronicity of life because we pause, we think about that. There's a lesson or a blessing somewhere in that experience, right? And in the connectedness idea, we say that connectedness is the idea that says everything happens for a reason. Now, when I compare restorative to connectedness, the first thing it winds up doing is creating a sense of affirmation or confirmation for the work that we have done. Look how far we've gone. We've solved all the problems, everybody's problems, the stress that came with that, the gray hair that came with that, to this space where we can move in more of a flow state where we understand that connections matter. Things happen for a reason, so we can pause when we can look at these things and we can get the understanding of the message. So it served as a confirmation and an affirmation for the work that we have done to grow ourselves. Because now, which is the second thing it made me do, is a sense of a relief, right? That responsibility and that accountability comes with weight. And now that I've removed myself from under that accountability and that responsibility to solve the problems or other people's problems or recognizing the problems, looking for the problems, because that's what I was good at. I would look for the problems. You know what I mean? Because I had a solution if I could find it. Now connectedness, I don't have to look for the problems. I look for the lessons and the blessings. I pause and I think about that. So it gave me a sense of relief because I'm no longer carrying that weight, that burden of having to deal with problems and solve problems and everyone coming with problems or me looking for problems and not being able to enjoy the lessons of the blessings, right? So I share that with you as an evidence that you too can take some time and do an assessment to see how far that you have gone. What has changed about you? And how does that change really make you feel about yourself? How has that change affected your self-esteem? And how has that change affected your confidence, right? Because the change has done wondrous things for you, right? So think about that. If you have the opportunity, you can check the Clifton Strength Finder. Then, of course, I'm going to tell you to take that again. I think it's like $50. Invest in yourself, right? So we are getting back to the show. And we're going to review, since it's been weeks, section 3. That's what we did. Group 3, yes. Group 3 was the universal laws that that were under the category of changes, consequences, and abundance. So the first law that we did was the law of perpetual transmutation. And it's funny because I read a comment the other day where somebody said, I transmute all that negative energy. And all I could do low key was clap, because they understood the law of perpetual transmutation, which is energy changes, can change form, and you can shift the state. You have the ability to shift low energy to high energy and vice versa. Transmutation happens when you name the state or identify the emotion, whether it be fear, anger, overwhelm, joy, any of those things. You name the state, you identify the emotion that you're dealing with, you breathe, which is, again, one of the reasons why we take those deep breath, those exercises, those breathing exercises, because breath work will be a handy tool in allowing you to shift energy, right? Or you get to move, right? And as you move around, whether it be dancing, whether it be yoga, whether it be exercising, whether it be running, any of those things, as you move around, you create a space and an opportunity for you to be able to reframe and choose one higher action. The next law in group 3, we also talked about the science of it, the law of conservation of energy, which simply said energy cannot be created or destroyed. It can only be transferred. And then we did an exercise, asked ourselves several questions to be able to assess how we are utilizing this law of transmutation. Again, because we have the ability to change energy. We are alchemists in our own right, right? The next law we talked about under the third category of changes, consequences, and abundance was the law of cause and effect. Let me see, this is messing me up. As simply put, the law of cause and effects is input creates output, and habits compound. The habits that you have, the routines that you have, as you build on them, they get bigger, stronger, and more reliable. So that's the law of cause and effect. What you put in, you put something in, you will get something out. So if you're not getting a lot of out, if your returns or your output, your experiences are something that you're not comfortable with or not quite where you want it to be, then pause and really ask yourself is, what am I putting in here? I think about it all the time as I see people talk about dating and romance and men and women. They put so much negativity out there and then don't understand what the output comes from that. So if you think negatively, one of those people that think the dating pool has pee in it, do you know what you're putting in the pool? The pee. So you know what you're going to get out. Experiences that confirm and validate your thoughts, not things that will challenge that. So in that, every action has a consequence and nothing happens by chance. That's the law of cause and effect. Right? Effects are outcomes, causes. The things that we put in, the causes, the input are our thoughts. Like I just talked, how you think about dating. Our emotions, our words, our spelling, right? Our actions, our habits, and our intentions. All of those are causes that we put in to get our output. Effects are outcomes, experiences, circumstances, and results, right? Then we also talked about the science that supports that. Physics was one that supported it in causality. An event cannot happen without a preceding event. Cause and effect. And we also talked about neurology as thoughts create brain changes. Thinking negative changes your brain. Thinking positive changes your brain, right? And then, of course, we did some exercises to assess that. The last law in group 3 was the law of compensation, right? which is essentially telling us that you are compensated for value, contribution, and integrity. Do you keep your word, right? With yourself, with others. What words are you bringing? Do they add value? Do other people value the things that you say? And what is your contribution? What services, what work are you putting in to be compensated, right? Contributions wind up being thoughts, actions, and intentions, right? So we put in, and if it has some value, we'll get some compensation. Many of us limit that compensation to monetary compensation at all, but the law lets us know that compensation goes beyond monetary. Compensation is respect. Compensation is peace. Compensation is fulfillment. When many people are looking for happiness, fulfillment is way more consistent than happiness, right? Fulfillment, influence, and joy are all ways that we are compensated for what input we are putting into the system, what value we are adding to the system. The main idea of that was life compensates you according to the value and the energy put into the world, our system that we deal with every day, right? Then we also I think I skipped the science on that one. And we did some exercises to help us be able to assess that. Next, we are moving into group 4. Group 4 is perspective, balance, oh man, and life cycles. I swear, this is how we got caught up last time. Because I be trying to do it in an hour, and I be taking so long just talking and doing all those other things. So we'll be all right. The first law we did is the law of relativity, which simply means meaning depends on context and comparison shapes our experience. Like the example I used earlier with the changes that I've had in the Clifton Strength Finders from restorative to connective. That allows me to have some comparison, right? In the law of perspective, the law of relativity, everything is relative and nothing has meaning by itself. Everything, we create meaning through comparison and contrast, right? Events, challenges, experiences are neither good or bad. They are very neutral. They take on meaning through, we give it the meaning through our perspectives. We give it meaning through context. We give it meaning through comparison. We give it meaning through our mindset, how we think about these things, right? Perfect examples that we use is light and dark, success and failure, peace and chaos, right? We understand peace because we've experienced chaos, right? Or even when we talked about the Clifton Strength Finders, the context is we've been doing work to become the best version of ourselves. So how do we view, how is our mind state changed? That gives us the opportunity for context, right? And our perspectives and all that, right? So we want to understand that emotional pain, once we apply it to ourselves, we deal with emotional pain. Emotional pain is relative, meaning that the pain is real, but the intensity at which we feel that pain depends on our emotional resilience, our experiences, our expectations, and the meaning we attach to it, right? So things may not have to feel so intense if we apply different expectations, we attach a different meaning to it, we utilize our emotional resilience, right? And we remove or add our experiences, right? We can adjust the intensity at which we feel emotional pain by shaping and reshaping these things, right? Science that support the law of relativity was cognitive appraisal, right? How we give value or interpret the event. That's it, right? Neuroscience also supports it when it says that emotional intensity is context dependent. Prior experiences, expectations, perceived alternates, because many people think the grass is greener, or they don't think they have any other alternates, and social comparison. How is someone else doing? That's the wild thing about social media. It has wind up giving us the opportunity to do a lot of social comparison, right? And humans naturally do social comparison to assess success, status, adequacy, and how safe we are, right? If where we're living, do we feel safe at where we're at? And how do we know what safety is? What are we comparing that to? Appreciate you, brother. Thanks for showing up, T. Appreciate you as always, man. So thanks. So now we want to do an exercise to be able to help us see how we are utilizing the law of relativity. So first we want to identify a challenge that we are facing in our lives. I wrote down that FMD. But yeah, I think right now the challenge is a little more in representation to that, right? And as you think about a challenge, ask yourself, this is a challenge compared to what? Right? Why do we see this as a challenge? What are we comparing it to? Right? Then ask yourself, how might this look in 1 year? As I think about the challenge before, is dealing with fibromuscular dysplasia, and that's in comparison to what my ideas of healthy was, right? And then as I ask myself, how might this look in 1 year? It can look very different, because through exercise, through a good diet, through working on my emotional, in 1 year, I actually will be healthy instead of an idea of healthy. I'll be the healthiest that I could be, that I've have been in a long time, because I'm doing the things that support healthy living, right? Next, ask yourself or identify what this situation is providing clarity on. So for me, I just said it. It is providing clarity on what healthy really is. What healthy really is for me. Now, that diagnosis might have been a motivating factor, but I really do have to look at health very different. I eat a little very different. Before, when I'd work out and still eat whatever I wanted to. But now I work out and I got a good diet to go with it. So I have a chance to be healthier than I've ever been. So it's really giving me clarity on what is healthy. So what is yours giving you clarity on? Don't forget, don't be afraid, share that in the comments. What is your challenge giving you clarity about? Next, for the reflective, ask yourself, how does perspective change my emotional reaction? So for me, when I first heard that diagnosis, I didn't know what it was, right? And when you hear something like that and then you hear about how rare it is, your just natural instinct is to think bad about it, like, oh man, that's terrible, right? So I know for myself, even though it might have came out as a joking manner, I told my homeboy, I was like, I told you, I don't even pump blood like you people, right? And he just laughed at it or whatever. But that perspective, even though it came out a joke, really changed the way my emotional reaction, how I react to this. I don't feel sad about it, right? I'm thankful for the understanding. It allows me to have gratitude. I'm thankful that I didn't have to have a stroke to find out about it. I'm thankful that I can still live a healthy life. I'm thankful that I'll be the healthiest I've been in years. All from that one diagnosis, right? So as you think about that challenge, as you think about how it's offering you clarity, also think, how will that new perspective change your emotional reactions? How will you react differently with this clarity that you're getting from your challenge, right? Next is the law of polarity. You know what's funny? I was talking to a friend the other day, right? No, coworker. We were sitting at the table, and I forgot what she said to me. And I asked her I said, hey, were you in that gifted and talented program when you were in school? And she was like, yes. And I knew she was, right? And I said, we ain't different than the kids that were in the small class. We just the other end of the spectrum. So the gifted and talented children have some of the same, I don't want to say hangups, but they have some of the same behaviors as the children that weren't in the gifted and talented. Not the ones in the middle, but the other extreme where they had IEPs and things like that, right? So we literally are on that same spectrum of cognitive differences. We were just celebrated for being on this side, and some of our emotions and stuff can be ignored because we were celebrated for having intelligence, but we really were the other end of the spectrum for those with cognitive delays, which is crazy, right? So the law of polarity are opposites are degrees of the same thing. That's why that story is important, because we're really only degrees of the same thing, gifted and talented and IEP, right? So everything has an opposite and is degrees of the same thing. We understand that. It moves us, this idea of the law of polarity moves us from seeing opposites as separate or conflicting, but recognizing that they are the same thing. They're on the spectrum of the exact same thing, right? We talked about that as it relates to temperature, hot and cold, right? We talk about hot and cold. We think about as conflicting or opposites, but they're not opposites. They're different degrees on the same temperature scale, right? Or emotions, hate and love. We talk about hate and love like their opposites are conflicting, but they're different on the same exact scale, the different ends on the same exact scales, right? So we don't really eliminate negative. We just shift degrees towards a positive direction. Negative will always exist to bring balance to the positive. Dark will always exist to bring balance to the light. Light will always exist to bring balance to the dark, right? So we learn that in the law of polarity, we're not moving from negative to positive. We're just changing degrees on the spectrum. And once we see it like that, we can acknowledge and appreciate the steps that it takes to get from one end of the spectrum to the other, right? Also, this law of polarity helps us understand that when we're talking about emotions, like we did with love and hate, they are temporary states. That's why we talk so much about happiness and the happiness paradox, where the people who chase happiness are the least happy people, right? Because they don't understand that emotions are temporary states, right? That we are supposed to move through, right? And if you're stuck on happiness, you don't get to enjoy fulfillment. You don't get to necessarily enjoy content, right? You're stuck on happiness, which is fleeting. It's supposed to go, right? So, example, we can move from anxiety to concern to calm to a space of confidence. The diagnosis is a perfect example. When I first heard it, I was anxious, then concerned, So I get some information. And after you get some information and some understanding, it brings a sense of calmness over you, right? And now that I got a sense of calmness, I can move into this space of confidence. I have the confidence to be able to be a voice or a representation of black men dealing with this condition, right? And of like only 1.5% of the people with the condition are black in the first place. And most of them, and 90% of that 1.5%, 90%, 1.5%, which is like what? 1.2% are black women. So 0.2%, 0.3% are black men. But that representation is necessarily needed. Science that support the law of polarity is neuroscience. Emotions are not binary. They exist in continuous dimensions. So these emotions already reside in you. They're with you all the time. We're just moving and shifting. That's why we have the ability to be able to transmute the energy, because they already exist. It already exists in us. It already exists with us. We're just using our power to shift and adjust along the spectrum of them, right? Psychophysics supports it, and perception requires contrast, right? That is, light is noticeable compared to darkness. That's where that is. And dialectic behavior therapy teaches us that two opposites can be true and part of the same system, right? Acceptance and change, both of them can be true and part of the same system that you shift back and forth. You go from acceptance to change, change to acceptance, vulnerability and strength. They're still both of the parts of the same system, and you shift back and forth between those, right? Now for the exercise. All right, here we go. It gives us an opportunity to shift emotional states gradually, right? So pick a feeling and its opposite. I wrote down fear and courage, stress and calm, but pick a feeling and then pick its opposite. Sadness and joy. I like fear and courage, right? Fear and courage. So pick an opposite, pick a word, emotion, pick a feeling, and then pick its opposite, right? And then after you do that, identify where you currently are on the spectrum, right? So I'm not that close to fear. I'm closer to courage, and thinking about now I want to be able to be a representation for something that's larger than me, right? So for me, I'm closer to courage than fear. But be authentic and honest with yourself. Where are you on this spectrum between these two emotions that you pick, right? Now, as you identified your current position, take some time and think about one small step in the opposite direction, or one small step towards the other end of the spectrum that you can do, right? So for me, I'm still moving towards courage, right? And something that winds up giving me courage is information. Knowledge is power. So the more I learn about it, the more confident I get in being able to express it to other people, being able to share my understanding with other people, being able to give other people some of the same things that I was looking for when I first started studying or trying to understand what FMD was, right? Oh, man. So what is the one small step that you can take? Share with me in the chat. Don't be afraid. Don't necessarily be afraid, but be vulnerable with the rest of the team, and share it in the chat. What's one small step that you can do to take you to the other side of that spectrum, right? Now for reflection, ask yourself, what is the next degree, not the opposite? So as you're thinking about these steps, What is the next degree as you move forward? Or what is a new spectrum that you need to move across as well, right? So think about that for yourself. The next law is the law of rhythm. The law of rhythm helps us to understand that everything has cycles. Highs and lows are natural. Ah, man, that's okay. I know your duty calls sometimes, and your babies need to hear their mama's voice and opinions, thoughts, and ideas, and all those things. So you showed up just in time. We got two more laws that we, I think maybe two, three, two, 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 three. All right, so we're on the law of rhythm now. So we said everything has cycles. Highs and lows are natural, right? So we're not supposed to just be happy all the time. If we were happy all the time, we wouldn't even understand what happiness was because we have nothing to compare it to, right? So this is understanding that life moves in waves, and understanding these waves helps us to suffer less, adapt faster, and live with greater balance. Once we understand that this is a natural flow, good and bad, light and dark, cold and hot, both of those things are supposed to exist, then we can move with the waves a little easier. Less resistance to the change or the flow of life, because that understanding will help us adapt faster, live with greater balance, right? And most importantly, suffer less, because we understand it as a part of life, right? Ways that we wind up resisting that flow is by one, trying to stay happy all the time, which we use the example of the happiness paradox. I say it again so we can understand this, because we see so many people talking about they want happiness in their life. They want this happiness. They want this happiness. They want this happiness. But happiness is a paradox. Those who chase happiness are the least happy. And if you ever seen the movie The Pursuit of Happiness, that dude was chasing happiness. And through the most of the movie, he was so far from happiness. He had nothing. And that's because he didn't understand the balance of life, right? So, also another way that we resist the flow is judging ourselves too harshly when we're in the down phase, thinking that because things are down or we're struggling right now, that is a reflection of who we are, and not necessarily a reflection of where we are on the spectrum or on this transition. We take these difficulties, these failures, and we hold them like they are our identity. They make the whole of us, right? This is that idea where some people are saying that everything ain't trauma. Everything isn't trauma, duh. But part of that problem is because once we experience it, we let it become the identity, the whole of us, right? So we judge ourselves too harshly in the down phase, right? The other way that we resist the flow is fearing the downturn. What goes up must come down. And that fear of that what come down can give us all types of stress. And to resist the flow and makes our suffering even more intense, right? Science that supports the law of rhythm. Yeah. We talked about biological rhythms. That was the perfect example to be able to think about how we are connected as human beings to this law of rhythm. We talked about circadian rhythms, which is a 24-hour cycle. Our sleep and energy levels are based on circadian rhythms, 24-hour cycle, right? We talked about the ultradian rhythm, which is multiple times within 24 hours. The example used is REM sleep. That happens to us multiple times within the 24-hour stage, multiple times, right? As a matter of fact, REM happens about every 90 minutes. Rapid eye movement is generally a part of our sleep stages. Then we also talk about infradian rhythms, which are longer than 24 hours. And we talked about that as relating it to our connect and drawing a connection to the menstrual cycle for our women, right? That's a cycle that shows up very frequently for women, but it is not based on a 24-hour schedule, right? Seasons move in that same cycle. They are infraradian rhythms as well, because they show up every year, but it takes longer than 24 hours, right? So for our exercise, we want to reduce the resistance. First, we want to do, again, identify our current phase. In our current phase, are we in a phase of expansion? Are we in the phase of contraction? Are we in the phase of integration? Are we in the phase of initiation? What phase are you in? Think about that. Are you in expansion phase, a contraction phase, an integration phase, or initiation phase? You know, that's a good question, because I've been kind of hard on myself, because I've been thinking I need to be in an expansion phase. But as we're having this conversation and as I'm learning new things, I recognize that really I'm in an initiation phase. There are certain things that I need to have some initiative on, like I use in being a representation, right? So where are you in these phases? Expansion, contraction, integration, or initiation, right? Now, as you have decided what phase you are in, the next thing you want to do is write down what this phase requires. For initiation, I need some clarity. All right, you in initiation too. Thanks. I think, hey, listen, we might need to do a DNA test or something so we can see how we connected. You in the same phases. So, what does that phase require? What does the initiation phase require? For me, I think it requires clarity. Perfect. I wouldn't even have thought of that. Initiation phase does require some action, right? But then you have to write down the actions, right? Because honestly, once you start moving into action, that's sliding into the expansion phase. In initiation, we identify, right? So we need some clarity. We need some action. What type of action that is? I think we need a little bit of confidence in initiation, right? We got to have the courage and the confidence to be able to go out there and do whatever is next for us to do, right? What else do you think is necessary for initiation? What does your phase require? If it's not initiation, what does expansion require of you? What does contraction require of you? Right, which is funny. I was in contraction, very good. Initiation also requires a little awareness and acceptance. I 100% agree. It definitely does require those things as well, right? Now, as you wrote down what your phase requires, here's a reflection question for you. As you think about your phase, ask yourself, am I honoring this phase or fighting it? And honestly, if I can be 100% truth, where I am going to be, because it's the family here, a piece of me is fighting it, right? And you pointed it out to me when you talk about you still waiting on videos from San Diego and Florida, right? So I recognize that I have this stuff and I'm still not necessarily taking the initiative. I want to make new videos when I'm not even doing what I need to do with the videos I already have, right? Okay, so in the past you were fighting it. What has changed? How are you not fighting it now in initiation, right? So ask yourself, are you honoring the phase you're in, or are you fighting against the phase you're in? Are you fighting against your expansion? Are you fighting against your contraction? Are you fighting against your integration, or are you fighting against your initiation? Oh man, I forgot to do that. Wah, wah, wah. Oh well, no love lost. I forgot the next Instagram. That'll be alright. The next law is the final. All right. It's been a long time. So this last law is the law of gender, right? And the law of gender is not talking about male or female. Like, we're not talking about sex. We're talking about energy, right? So in the law of gender, it states or helps us understand that creation requires complementary forces, balance, right? So the example that we have is receptivity and structure. To receive, you got to have some structure, right? So when we're thinking about the law of gender, we're thinking about balanced energy, balanced energy, balanced energy. Everything contains both masculine and feminine, right? And again, we're looking at gender as an energy or a function and not an identity or a sex, right? So masculine energy, masculine forces are things like action, focus, will, logic, direction, decision making, structure, discipline, execution. All of those are masculine type energies, masculine type functions, right? Action, focus, will, logic, direction, decision making, structure, discipline, execution can be identified as masculine energies. Feminine energies can be identified as things like intuition, flow. So if we're resisting the flow, we know we're out of alignment with our feminine energy. Reflection, creativity, nurturing, patience, emotion, connection, and receptivity, right? All of those are feminine energies when we're talking about the law of gender, masculine and feminine. Intuition, flow, reflection, creativity, nurturing, patience, emotion, connection, and receptivity, right? And when we're thinking about these things, these are not energies that we could just see. These energies or these thought processes are operating in our mind, right? We're either thinking with our masculine mind or our feminine mind. This isn't a testament or a statement about women or men. It is talking about our mind processes, how we process in the mind. So these genders operate in the mind, right? Analysis, planning, implementation, masculine mind. Imagination, insight, intuition, feminine mind. Both of those things exist in our bodies, in our mind, how we navigate, right? The science that supports the law of gender is one, neuroscience, complementary brain functions. What does that mean? Certain parts of your brain, certain pathways in our brain take care of certain things, right? And then different pathways take care of other things. There are pathways in our brain that take care of action and control. But those pathways do not deal with integration, emotion, or meaning. There are different neural pathways in our brain that helps us make meaning, integration, and deal with emotions than what we use to deal with action or control, right? Different neural pathways that supports that. For the exercise, we want to restore balance, appreciation, and value for both our masculine mind and our feminine mind. So at times we can be right when we say somebody's stuck in their masculine mind, right? Even though we try to limit that to behaviors, it's not behaviors, it's thought processes. Or we say somebody's too stuck in their feminine mind. And we try to label that with behaviors because that makes us feel better as humans, but it's not behaviors. It's energetic and thought processes. How are we processing things, right? So we want to have an exercise to help us restore balance. First thing you want to do is identify where you overuse. Do you overuse action and control, or you overuse receptivity and flow? Right? I honestly can say I've definitely overused action and control. The amount of stress I've had in my life of feeling like it requires a response, or I need to be able to have a little more control. Life has been giving me the opportunity to be able to be a little more receptive and accepting, and it allows me to flow a little bit better, right? So this is probably the most consistent without being stressed out. Just thinking about something as simple as working out, right? You know what I mean? Because I'm more receptive to the flow. Like I have a schedule in my mind that I want to do it 2 days on, 1 day off. But sometimes life doesn't allow me to do it like that. Sometimes I got to do 2 days on, 2 days off, right? What makes you think that you overuse receptivity? Whoo. Knowing you, I wouldn't have picked receptivity. But because I put receptivity with the flow, I can agree. So I can agree. Well, I am the opposite. Action and control. I need to let me do my part, right? So flow. I do. Yeah, definitely stuck in a space where you're just going with the flow of things, right, wrong, and indifferent. So I can see that, right? So what are you overusing? Action and control, receptivity, and flow. After you identified what you are overusing, then choose one action to support the opposite energy. We making these very small things. Like sometimes we get overwhelmed by thinking about all the things that we need to do to change, right? But change starts at one step at a time. So as you've identified what you overuse, choose one action that supports the opposite energy. So for me, mine is action and control. I have to add something else, right? So you can think about it for you in action and control, you want to add some rest and reflection. If you're in receptivity and flow, do you need some more structure or execution, right? Um I don't necessarily think well, you know what? I might have to say I might need to add more rest to my action and control, right? And initially, I wasn't going to say that. I was thinking about maybe a little more reflection, but as I think about it, it probably is rest. And the only reason why I say that is I never, ever sleep this long, right? So when I was in Florida, I had my little watch on when I went to sleep, and it'll tell you how long you slept. I slept 10 hours one night, 10 and a half hours. I never sleep 10 and a half hours, period. But if I pause and I listen to my body and the energy, my body might be telling me, like, bro, you just need a little more rest, right? And even though I confused, okay, so the reason why I didn't want to see it is I recognize that I confused not being busy with rest. Like, well, I don't got a lot going on right now, so that's rest. That's not necessarily rest. That's just not being busy. You feel me? So that's not the same thing. But if I can go to sleep and sleep 10 hours, 10 and a half hours, I might need more rest. I might need to take more naps. I might need to go to bed instead of fall asleep, which is very different. I had this conversation with Toddy all the time because she's very good at falling asleep. And I recognize that in her because I do it the same. I am the same. I'm very good at falling asleep. I just do stuff till I go to sleep. I don't just consciously anymore. Like, even when I get into bed, I can give myself a bedtime. I can get into bed. And I still won't just consciously be like, all right, I'm going to take my glasses off, close my eyes, and go to sleep. I just keep doing something, whether it be watching TV, scrolling my phone, doom scrolling on my phone, until I pass out. Right? So what is one action that you can do to support the opposite energy? Do you need to add more rest and reflection? Or do you need more structure or execution? What do you need to add? What do you need to add? What you wound at? My 10 and a half hours of sleeping? I never sleep that long. I'm 6. I'm ready to go. New day. I'm out here. I'm on these streets. New day. I appreciate. Wait a minute. Okay, there you go. I'm sidetracking because this shirt got a patch on it. It look like a button, but it ain't no button. And I don't have a shirt with the logo on the sleeve right here, which is interesting, period. Sorry. My ADHD be kicking in. I get sidetracked easily. So after you thought about the action that you can do to support the opposite energy or the other end of the spectrum, you need more execution. Yeah, I can see that. But as we're thinking about this, which is consistent, as we're doing these questions, the only thing that the question is asking us to do is just think of one thing to try to help us not get bogged down by all the things that we need to do. So as you think about execution, what is one thing that you can do to help with some execution? As a matter of fact, even better, this is the reflection question. Ask yourself, do I need more structure or more space? Do I need a better design? Do I need a better framework? Do I need better blueprints? Or do I need to give myself the space, the time, and the opportunity to be able to execute, right? Am I realistic about the space and the time that I need, right? Because we have that tendency, we want these things to happen very quickly. And we put that pressure on ourselves to make these things happen very quickly. But that might not be the case for us at this point, right? So ask yourself, do you need more structure or more space? What do you need? What do you need? which is why I probably need more structure. Being honestly, even I think I got the space to be able to do it. I just need more structure. And even as wild as it is, some of the things that I leave unstructured, like going to sleep, probably needs more structure. I need to go to sleep instead of fall asleep, right? So, in your reflection, ask yourself, do you need more structure or more space as you navigate these energies? All right, family. We did that. In the phase of time and space to lead to the execution. That's okay. So, which is wild. Um, I agree with that, right? But one thing that I want to say be mindful of, because it's really what led me to saying I need more structure, because time and space also needs a framework. So as wild as it is, when we think about structure, a lot of times we think about structure and routine, right? But structure is very different than routine. And structure can be applied to things with no shape, right? So time and space really has no shape, even though we give it shape, right? That's what we need to do. So when you think about time and space, that's why I wind up leading to structure, because time needs a shape and the space needs a shape. What does that mean? How does that look for me? What are the signs and symbols that will help me to see that I have the time and I have the space? What are the signs that I'm looking for, right? So ask yourself those questions and think about that, right? I think that is a very good though. Execution definitely, which is I think this is a perfect example how you went from execution and space and time, how much we flow back and forth. You know what I mean? So as we learned about that law of polarity, we really get to acknowledge and see how we slide back and forth between these polarities on the spectrum, right? And how they blend in together. So it's fantastic how we can go from execution, but to be able to execution, we need time and space. We need them both. We sliding back and forth. That lets us know how powerful we are and how we are really alchemists of our own energy and the energy around us, right? Structure is important. It is. But structure for the most part is not necessarily routine. Like I said, it's more of give that shape. Like what does that like people be like I want to be happy, right? What is the shape of happiness? You know what I mean? If not friend, why friend shaped? You feel me? So what does that shape? What is the execution? What's the shape of execution? What is the shape of time? What is the how does that look? How do we define that time? How do we define that flow? How do we define our action? How do we define our control, right? Yeah, I think that is a good journal. Like most all of this stuff is are good journal topics. That's why I wanted people to have a pen, right? And being able to hone in on your healing and writing it down, it'll be able to help you actually give shape to what that is. You know what I mean? You'll be able to see how you've grown. So that's a wall. You'll be able to see where you need to go next. That's a new wall. You know what I mean? As we were building this house or this building or this version of you, we got the foundation, and now we're working on the walls, right? So I do think that is a very good journal thing because it'll help you conceptualize, and also it allow you to give yourself a little bit of grace because as you write it down, you can start seeing what stays the same and what changes, right? So family, I think we did a great job on boom. Hey man, did it hang up on me? I know that's right. The Church of Faith. You heard? You hear me? That is 100%. We hadn't used that in a long time. So thanks to that reminder. The Church of Anthony. You know what I mean? That is, the name is your direct connection to the universe around you. And you know what faith means. And I love, I'm going to use my own name, which means priceless. You dig? So the Church of Anthony is priceless. So family, we did 12 universal laws. I hope that you were able to receive something from that. You got some new lessons, some new understandings, some things to be able to help you process how you are using these laws in your life. We're about to wrap up the show for this week. I hope to see you Thursday, where we will continue reading Changeling. It's been a couple of weeks, so I don't even remember where we at. So Thursday, we'll see you. With book club. If you can't make it Thursday, I hope to see you back here Tuesday night as we continue Soul Swami Live. I think we're going to go into either ego or health. I want to revisit ego a little bit because I don't think we talked enough about why killing the ego is not a good idea. Unaliving your ego is not a good idea, right? Because ego has a very, 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 very good purpose. So we'll talk a little about that, or we're going to talk a little bit about health and the importance of our relationships with doctors and health, right? So before we go, I want to remind you that you are safe and secure. You are grounded and centered. You are self-sufficient. You are financially secure. And you love being in your body. There's no life that's better than yours. I thank you, family, for your support as always. I missed you while we was gone those last couple of weeks, so I was glad to be back in the studio with the setups and all that stuff. I look forward to connecting with you Thursday for book club, and if you can't make it a book club again, I hope to have you back here for another episode of Soul Swami Live. And with that, family, I wish you many blessings and peace.